I want them now.
All righty. Hello and welcome to the Kansas City SQL Server User Group. Glad you could join us for our session with Tracy Boggiano presenting Migrating to Azure SQL because life is too short to manage your own servers. I have to say, as I said earlier, Tracy, best tagline ever. That finally get a good night's sleep without having to worry about your servers misbehaving like a group of rowdy toddlers. I love it. It's perfect. We will be having a Q&A throughout the presentation with Tracy pausing at specific time to ask for questions, so feel free to pop them in the chat or come off mute. Just a note, this session is recorded when we upload it to our YouTube channel in the next few days. And with that, I'll let you take it away, Tracy.
All right, I'm going to go off camera to be less distracting with my hands because I move my hands a lot. So she's already told you the title, so we'll move on. I'm Tracy Boggiano. I'm known as Database Superhero. Some of you may have seen me 3 months ago. It's only been 3 months. I mean, geez. But easiest way to find me is databasesuperhero.com. I have lots of logos on my slide, but I really only talk about the stuff I do with foster care stuff because that's what I do outside the SQL realm. Only because I try to encourage other people to just volunteer in general outside of work if you can. But I've been volunteering for 20 years as a foster kids advocate in court, and I really enjoy doing that. And I've advocated for 67 children at this point through their walk through the foster care system. And I'm currently the president of the board of directors for the Foster Family Alliance North Carolina as well to, help encourage foster families and get more foster families into being foster families. And then I have a whole bunch of other logos that don't really matter in comparison to that stuff. So, but I do stuff with mental health and run user groups and all that other blah, blah, blah stuff. So, but my tagline is I usually can be found trying to make a difference somewhere. So we'll move on to the presentation after, boring you with logos. We're basically going to go through an intro of the presentation, understand a little bit about what Azure SQL Databases offer us, go through the great migration from servers to Azure, and go through a little bit about how to manage your Azure SQL databases, and then wrap it up. Got about 70 slides. Some of them are just screen captures though to walk you through a migration because it's a lot easier than trying to do one live when the internet might be a little grouchy. Internet was a little grouchy earlier today, so I'm glad it cleared up. So we'll start off with the introduction. This is a slide deck from a workshop that Bob Ward and Anna Hoffman gave on Azure. You can actually find this out on GitHub, a whole presentation on just Azure SQL DB, VMs, and MIs. But this just shows you the portfolio of what they have to offer as far as Azure SQL goes, starting with just VMs. They do have VMs out there that you can, host full-fledged SQL Server on, have infrastructure as a service. Then they have a step down from that, the managed instances, which are more modernized for your existing apps and give you a little bit less capabilities, but this is where we start getting into platform as a service. And what we're going to talk about is the Azure SQL Database, which is even a little bit less capabilities of the managed instances, but also as pre-provisions give you less options, but also less hassle because there's less maintenance you got to do, less things you got to set up. And like I said, get away from your rowdy toddlers, as I said in my description of the presentation, and get it to where you're doing less maintenance and more designing, more coding, and more things like that to release applications and worrying less about maintenance tasks and stuff. So, but as I put, we're going to talk more about escaping those rowdy toddlers, your servers, that hardware that's sitting there. Let Microsoft worry about that. You'll be paying them enough to worry about it. Trust me. There's been plenty of times where I've had one of my rowdy toddlers have a hardware failure in the middle of the night, and I get woke up for a RAID controller going out and having a corrupt database because it's written some zeroed out my pages, and I've had to recover corrupt databases, or a motherboard has went out and things like that. And sometimes I've had companies that didn't have like servers for redundancy, or they didn't have the redundancy set up quickly so that things would actually fail over. So, who gets woke up? I do, because the database is down, even though I'm not the hardware person who can take care of the servers. We can't connect to the database, and they didn't even bother to check to see if the server was even running. So these are all things that we get stuck trying to rectify. So, but some of the problems you have with having your own servers is, one is your maintenance of your on-prem servers. You've got to constantly go through and be patching them. There's how many CUs now for 2019, 2022? Where I think 2019 is up to 24 or 25 CUs. They come out nearly every month. If you have it in Azure, you don't really have to worry about that. There's all kinds of software bugs between SQL, Windows, anything else you might actually install on your VMs. You have to worry about those bugs with the drivers for your NIC cards, your video cards, or any other hardware cards you have in there. You got to worry about those as well, and you got to worry about upgrades. You got to upgrade it from 2019 to 2022 to, I don't know, 2027. I don't know what the next version is going to be, but you got to actually upgrade those. So there's all that maintenance that comes into there. You also got to worry about, as your data grows, so does your storage and your processing power that you need with your on-premise servers. So with the data growth, you would have to typically purchase and install new hardware to handle this growth, which becomes costly and time-consuming over time, because then you're switching out servers and trying to get all this new hardware into place. And that's more rowdy toddlers you're swapping in and out and trying to get in place and stuff. And Azure SQL DB, we don't have to worry about that. Then you've also got, you have to design the availability and disaster recovery. Implementing high availability and disaster recovery strategies can be kind of complex and expensive for on-prem. This usually involves setting up redundant hardware and software and ensuring that you have a reliable backup and restore process. Some of this stuff is taken care of for us. Then you got to worry about costs too. On-prem servers come with upfront costs of hardware and software, which as you keep going on, you've got to actually taking costs for maintenance, electricity, cooling, physical space, which most days we're not actually putting them like in the same building or offices are in. Back in the day, we used to do that. Now we actually have other places, but those costs still are passed on to us. And now that cost can, fluctuate and change over time and get unpredictable. And those costs get passed on to us where you can lock in a rate with Azure. So now we'll talk about living the dream. Yay, being in the Azure land, up in the cloud. So, dreamy land in the cloud. So this is what we get with going to Azure SQL Database. One, you're always on the latest stable version of SQL. No more worrying about upgrading. You're just automatically there. You have automated backups. You don't ever have to worry about SQL agents stopping and taking backups or they're getting some sort of process blocking them or anything. Microsoft's monitoring the backups for you. If there's anything going on, they're going to resolve it. There is no patching for you. Microsoft takes care of the CUs and all that stuff being applied automatically for you. You can scale up and scale down on demand. So if you need more CPU or more memory or more storage, you can add it on demand and you can pull it back down. You can actually, adapt your maximum performance, reliability, and data protection. There's all kinds of things in there that you can actually, change to help with performance and make sure you have enough replicas to make sure you have reliability and make sure you're protecting your data. You can do data masking for security and stuff. And another cool thing is it's already compliant with a lot of regulatory compliance stuff for security. So you don't have to worry about making it HIPAA compliant or GDPR, I always say those initials wrong, or FedRAMP compliant if you're doing anything with the US government. That's just already done as far as the infrastructure goes. You just have to worry about inside your database itself, but as far as the infrastructure itself, it's already done. So those are some key benefits to doing it. Any questions so far?
Question. Tracy.
Sure.
For those compliance things, are those like, how does it know what you need to be compliant to?
Well, it's mostly doing the infrastructure layers for you, where it makes sure you have the right things in place for like the network and things like that. Those things are already set up. It doesn't do like inside the database itself, like
Right.
your PI data, you would still need to secure in the correct way.
Okay, cool. Thank
But
you.
you don't have to worry about like the TCP/IP protocols and things like that being set certain ways. We don't have to worry about the SQL audit. They would have one that you can automatically turn on if you needed to for compliance and stuff. So they just already have a lot of that extra infrastructure stuff you got to do on-prem to secure your whole entire environment already done for you. You still have the internals of your particular database that you would have to do, but it takes out a lot of the extra stuff.
Got it. Thanks.
So, because there's so much hardening you got to do for that security stuff. So now we'll talk about getting freedom from the SQL Server tantrums, or just server tantrums in general. So first, let's understand some of the problems that our servers have. One, they can overheat. You know, live in Arizona, or what are some other hot places in the U.S.? The hardware fails. The motherboard goes out. The memory chips go bad. The RAID controllers go bad. The disk fail. Network issues. No, there's never a DNS problem, is there? Never. We talked about software bugs earlier. Security vulnerabilities, like try to keep up with security vulnerabilities that by itself, and ransomware and stuff. I mean, that almost by itself is worth going into the cloud, and even with VMs, just so you have their firewall protection and their help with setting some of that stuff up, and having their threat protection is almost worth having some of that stuff. Resource exhaustion. You buy a server and you think you're set for 5 years, and you max out the CPU and memory. You don't have no choice but to buy another server, and you've already tanked your money into this, and now you got to chuck it or repurpose it for something else and buy something else. Whereas in the cloud, you can at least ramp it up, and you get more configuration errors on prem, whereas in the cloud, stuff kind of comes a little bit pre-configured for you with some of the best practices. And they even have best practice analyzers out in the cloud to check your environment for you. And you tend to have more downtime and maintenance updates that we have to do when we're doing it. And now, they can take care of that stuff for us, and let's not work weekends and do upgrades and CUs and patch Windows and patch SQL Server and patch all the drivers and all that fun stuff. So now on to superheroes don't wear capes. They just use Azure. I only wish that was true. If it was that simple. So our benefits of going to Azure SQL Database as a platform is, one, they do take automatic backups for us. So they automatically take our log backups and our diff backups and a full backup for us. They take a full backup once a week. I think the diff backups I don't remember, but the transaction log backups are every 5 minutes, I believe. They automatically patch, so when a CU comes out, they automatically have a window. I think recently they just released the ability to control better when that window is, or at least getting alerts on when they're going to actually be taking. You're going to be taking that little bit of downtime for patching. And then you have the elastic scalability, where you can scale up and scale down. You can use elastic pools to share resources between databases and things like that. So you have the ability to share resources between things, or just have a database all by itself with a set of resources. As far as your backup types, that's why I didn't remember, because I had it on the next slide. So your transaction log backups are every 5 to 10 minutes. The differentials, I still don't remember how often those are taken. I think those are just every few hours, if I remember right. I don't think they have a set time for those. Full backups are usually weekly. You can actually set up retention policies to keep these databases depending on your tier that you're on. The basic tier, I believe, was 7 days, and then the premium tier after that was the standard and premium tier were 35 days where you can keep them, and then you got the ability to have long-term retention to keep them up to 10 years. And that's so much better than trying to figure out where to keep them yourself on prem and trying to make sure wherever you're keeping them on disk doesn't get corrupt. You can let them worry about that. I'm so much in favor of someone else worrying about some stuff for me. Security, your backups are always encrypted using managed keys that Microsoft has, or your own customer managed keys. You can make sure they're geo-replicated somewhere so that you don't have to worry about, you can have them available during an outage if you need to. They're easy to restore. You have a GUI to restore them in the portal. You have a command line you can restore them to. You can do it via PowerShell. You got a REST API you can use. So any way you want to do it, you got a way to program it and do it, or click and do it. And you can store it to a new database or replace over the existing database, of course. And then you do have a geo restore if you know there's a catastrophic event and the data center goes out, you are able to restore to another region and make it available over there so that you can get back up and running if you weren't already replicating to another region. So it just gives you the flexibility to do what you need to do there. As far as automatic patching goes, they just automatically handle this for you, so you don't really worry about it much. It does include security patches and everything for the engine itself. Microsoft mostly rolls out these patches in a very controlled manner across the whole environment, ensuring that everything has the most minimum impact it can on the customers. The timing of the patch, it depends on, is managed by Microsoft, and you generally just don't need to concern yourself about it because it's near zero downtime patching in most cases. And I've had instances where like we never noticed when they patched them at the company I was at that we had Azure SQL DB. We just never noticed it. So, and the good thing is it is compliant with a lot of security measures that we had in place. It helps keep things in compliance, but and keeps away vulnerabilities. Because I know one thing I disliked about being under like the security compliance was like FedRAMP and stuff is that they always want you to know to CU, and it's like those come out every month. I have hundreds of servers. That's a lot of patching to keep up with every month, and to get it through dev, test, QA, staging, and prod, and then start over again in 4 weeks was a lot, even with automated processes. So, and then you're always up to date on the newest version upgrades. So you always have the newest features. So that's the great thing about it is you don't have to wait until your boss says you can upgrade to new servers or upgrade to the newest version or test run it or anything like that. You're just always at the newest version. You're always at the cutting edge. So as far as scalability, you can scale on demand. You can scale up and down on the fly. This means you can increase the compute power during peak usage times or decrease it during off-peak, and this will help you optimize your costs. For elastic pools, this is a feature which allows you to share the resources across multiple databases. This is particularly useful when you can't predict, you have unpredictable usage patterns, and this will help balance the load and optimize that resource usage and help you save costs. But you can also auto pause and auto resume databases using the serverless compute, and that will help you with your storage cost and leaving you only paying for your storage costs and help you save on your compute costs. And you can actually do a storage scale as well. You can do dynamically storage scale, and you can increase your storage size as your data grows without affecting any running operations. So, you know, you go on the fly, add 50 gigs to something, and it doesn't even notice that you're doing it. Then they do have the hyperscale tier, which is for very, very large databases that, you can go up to 100 terabytes, and it gives you very high throughput on your IO and very fast response times in CPU. So it's made to handle very large stuffs, so to speak. Technical terms there. Any more questions at this point?
We did have a question. We did have one come in that says, do DBAs have the option to set the onset of automatic patching?
No. I think you have the ability to possibly control the window when it will happen. Like you can make it happen at like 9, like during certain hours at night. But other than that, you don't have much control over it at all. I think when they've announced some changes to it recently that I'm not too familiar with, because it just came out like a week or two ago, but we had no control over it at all at my last company. So, but when we had managed instances, we didn't have no control either. They just sent us out a thing that told us, hey, this was going to happen during this time frame.
Got it.
At least we got an alert for that. We didn't get alerts for our SQL DBs, so. Okay. But like I said, when we had the Azure SQL DBs at my last company, we didn't even notice when they took it down. So so now we'll talk more about the actual migration from servers to Azure. We'll talk about plotting the Great Escape. Hopefully we'll do better than the herd of horses that probably don't really have a good plan. So we're mostly going to talk about, the importance of careful planning. One, we want to make sure we minimize downtime. When you go into something like this, you're going to be migrating a lot of data over, and you don't want the business to be down. So we've got to make sure we do some careful planning and try to do this during a period of time that has the least amount of activity for a company, or do a phased migration to gradually move workloads depending on how your stuff is structured. We want to make sure we understand the cost, because the cloud can get quite pricey if you don't do it correctly, and it can get quite complex. So careful planning along this area can keep the sticker price from happening and your bosses from getting surprise bills. You also want to make sure you're watching out for that security and compliance there, because migrating data to the cloud, just, you want to make sure you're following those requirements and it's meeting your needs for that sensitive data, and make sure you're using that data masking and the threat protection and things like that they do have in place, and you know what you have available there to help you with the security and compliance. And you got to make sure it's compatible and it's performing the way you want it to, because you know how you have compatibility mode in on-prem, you still have that in the cloud. So you got to make sure if you migrate your code up there and it's set automatically to the newest compat mode, that it's actually going to work in that compat mode, and you don't need to set it to a different compat mode and things like that. And you got to make sure you're allocating enough resources and things like that, and make sure all those things actually get addressed, just like you would if you were on-prem. And you got to do a little bit of training on cloud. The database itself is the same. I mean, there's less features, but the engine, how it works, all that stuff that you know how to do in SQL Server, it's the same. You write the same stored procedures, you design the same tables, all that's the same. You look at the same execution plans. That basic stuff's the same, but you got to learn how to use the portal. You got to learn how to connect to it. You got to learn different tools and ways to access the engine and, automate things in order to use it, correct, in an efficient manner. So, and then you'll be actually, trying to make a strategy for how to migrate the data, because depending on the size of your data, transferring the data can be quite significant, and this will require some planning there. You can use the Azure Data Migration Service. There's like 10 different things you can use to actually migrate the data, or 20 or 100 at this point. They keep making different tools you can use to migrate, and we're going to look at one during the presentation. Then you also want to plan for your disaster recovery and high availability. What options do you have? You know, you've got geo-replication, you've got failover groups, and planning which ones you want and which one meets your business needs and your budget is important ahead of time to make sure that the business is on page with that. Because I've had some companies where they won't hit the geo-replicate because that costs a little bit extra money, but then when it goes out, the data center goes out, they're like, oh, what happened? Oh, I tried to tell you that if East went out, you wouldn't have a database. So, and then you want to plan for some post-migration testing. You want to make sure you know what to test extensively on that side when everything comes over, performance testing, functionality testing, and failover testing to make sure everything's ready to go. And in short, you know, migrating this over isn't just moving data from point A to point B. It's a pretty complex process, just like moving from server to server can be pretty complex. You know, if you know, poor planning can lead to just unnecessary cost and more downtime for the business and a host of other problems that you don't want to have to deal with, and it'll make it more smooth with some careful planning. So some pitfalls that I have seen and mistakes I have seen people make is one, just not adequately assessing their current environment and knowing what's there and what dependencies that are on that particular database. People will move a database and then find out there's 20 other applications that were connected to that database, and now the database is in the cloud or something. You know, so we've got to make sure we know what's accessing the database, what performance metrics are important, make sure that one-off report that runs at the end of the month, we know about it, things like that. Neglecting to actually estimate the actual cost of what's gonna cost to run in Azure. A lot of companies will put stuff in Azure and then all of a sudden they don't want it in Azure anymore because of it costs too much, but they don't realize, you know, the different things they can do to get a little bit less cost, but it's also, you know, they don't factor in how much time it's saving the employees with things they're not having to do so they can do other things. So someone's got to do a total cost of ownership to calculate up how much it's really costing versus just, you know, the actual sticker cost. And not considering all the security compliance stuff that you need to consider, because there are the regulatory compliance that it's compliant with, but there may be additional controls that you need to do. You may need to put encryption in place or other things like that. So you need to double check that. One of the bigger ones is actually just not doing training for the employees. Just like, you know, hey, we're going to the cloud. Plop. Here you are. You're in the cloud. But here's a login, and that's the training you get. With no time in the office to like even attend something like this to even get a, you know, overview of it. So and not planning for that post-migration testing that we were talking about, you know, where you can test to make sure things are working after the fact and make sure things are doing, and overlooking the importance of having that high availability and disaster recovery planning, because some people think just because it's in the cloud and they have it there that they don't have to plan for it or test for it. And worse off, not having an ability to roll it back. We need our rolling pin, you know, to beat up people who don't have a rollback plan. It's like, you know, that's like most critical thing that you can have in IT is the ability to roll back plan. You know, if you don't have ability to go back, you're shooting yourself in the foot at some point if something messes up. And then there's features out there that people just forget to take advantage of. You know, they have automatic performance tuning out there, and the threat detection that people forget to take advantage of. The automatic tuning, you know, some of that's available on-prem depending on what version of SQL Server you're in with Query Store. but it doesn't have the auto create indexes, which depending on what it's doing, you may not want it to do, but you may want to alert it if there's a index that it thinks it wants to create, so you can go out and manually create it. The threat detection tells you if someone's trying to access your database, so they shouldn't be trying to access it. So things like that, you want to check out these features that it has so that you can make sure you're taking full advantage of everything that it has to offer. Now, this is another slide I borrowed from Bob Ward and Anna Hoffman. And this goes through like your steps that they recommend you go through to migrate or do a new deployment to Azure. So one is the pre-migration is you do discovery of your environment and you try to find everything that all your inventory, your data assets and your application and your whole stack to discover everything. Then you assess your workloads, and there's a tool for accessing your workloads, and you fix any recommendations it has for things that may not migrate up to Azure SQL DB. Then you would convert the schema to the target environment and anything else that needs to go there. And then you would migrate all the data objects, and then you sync up everything, and then you cut it over, and then you fix and optimize everything. Simple, right? It looks very simple if everything goes according to plan. So we'll talk a little bit about avoiding the turbulence of things that might go wrong. So these are the different migration methods that were available at the time I created this presentation about 5 or 6 months ago. There's a bunch of them. You got Azure Migrate. The one we're going to use is the Azure SQL Migration Extension in Azure Data Studio because it gives a nice wizard to just go right through it. It's the one that was most documented on the Microsoft's website. You've got transactional replication, good old, on-prem solution there. So I would recommend one of the top 3 because those are the ones where you would be doing it live. This one probably for more larger databases because you would transactionally replicate it until you're ready to cut it over. So that was. So now we're just going to go through some print screens on how to migrate the data over using the Azure SQL Migration Extension for Azure Data Studio. And basically what this does is an overview. You have your on-prem server. You'll have our Azure Data Studio, and you would collect performance metrics, save it to a local file. It would analyze and recommend what resources you need as far as the Azure SQL DB to allocate for that particular instance that you analyzed and recommended. And that was part of your assessment stage. You would actually go through the wizard. It would recommend what SKU that you would need in Azure SQL DB, and it would show you any blockers. Like if you had CLR used in your instance, it would say, hey, you can't use CLR, so you need to fix all that. Or database mail, if you're using database mail in there, it would flag that, or any of those features that you can't use in Azure SQL DB. It would show those as blockers and ask you to resolve those before you could migrate up. So this is where we start all our nice little print screens. So over here, we would have our Azure Data Studio, and we would right click on our server that we connected to out in Azure, and we would click on Manage. Then it would pop up the screen, and we would just click on Azure SQL Migration when it comes up with our general screen. Then we would click on Migrate to Azure SQL to get to the migration wizard. And then we have a list of all our databases, and it would tell us if it's online and when the last backup was and all that good stuff. So we have good old AdventureWorks. Who's never heard of AdventureWorks? So then we click Next. And then we ran a little assessment on here, and it's told us our recommended SKUs for it and blah, blah, blah for the 3 different things. And we're going to skip looking at that, I think, I remember right. But we're going to go to Azure SQL DB and look at the recommendations for that, I think. And we're going to migrate to Azure SQL DB, view the assessments and results, select a database. We go into AdventureWorks. It says we have no issues. We're ready to migrate. Then we come back out here. We get our Azure recommendation. We come in here, we tell it where we want to collect the performance data to. We tell it to start collecting performance data. And then we tell it to collect our data and we save and close. And then we can view our results because we supposedly ran this for an hour or whatever. And we can actually see right here, it recommended a 4-core 32 gigabyte machine for our Azure managed instance. It recommended these letters for this. I don't feel like reading letters. And it came up with recommendation for our Azure SQL DB. And it gives you this long screen for each one of those that describes what it came up with. So we basically got a general purpose 4-core, 2 gigabytes of storage for our Azure SQL DB. It wants at least 1 core for the CPU. Doesn't need much memory or anything like that. And this is what the IOPS it says it needs. So we've got us a nice little recommendation, and it tells us how it came up with it and how to satisfy its needs. So we can close out this screen and we can move on to the next step, which is to actually create our Azure SQL target. So we would fill in our Azure account, and you can select that from the drop-down list along with your subscription, your location, and your resource group. And then you would select your Azure SQL database from the drop-down and give it your username and password that you want to connect with. And then we have our source database. We can tell it what our target database would be. And in this instance, I'm doing an offline migration just because it was easier for this to allow the application to have downtime, because this was just a simple demonstration. And then we have our username and password again, and we hit edit to say what tables we want to do. And I just selected these 3 tables right here that were employee tables to keep this nice and simple and fast. And now that we have 3 of our 71 tables selected, we're going to hit next. And pretty much we've got our Azure data migration service that we have to set up now. And this is a service that would run in the background whenever you select this. And if you selected the 71 tables and it was going to take 2 or 3 hours to run, it would just run in the background and continuously run this until it was finished. So you would download and install this integration runtime and hit refresh so that it would actually set this stuff up and register these authentication keys. Test your connections on it to make sure it's able to connect to both things. And then you would start the migration. And it's really that simple to do a migration. You just run through this wizard. And it can do it online too, as you've seen before. And then when you come out to the screen, you can actually see the progress of it doing here. You can see that I had one that I had failed. I had none that had completed yet, and one that was going through. And you can sit here and watch it. And then as things progress, you can see that one's in progress, one's going, and then eventually you can drill down and get into the details and see that it's creating this migration out to the server. It's in progress. It's preparing these tables. This is all the status stuff that you can see as it's going through this migration. It's successfully completed them. And we're done. Woohoo! Fastest migration ever. That's because our tables were little EB tables. Any questions before I move on from there? I think I might see a little chat bubble, or that might be from before.
Nope, you are correct. We do have a question from Young. I hear you mention meaning functional test. Is there other tests such as regression tests for database migration project?
If you're sitting on an older version of SQL, you're gonna want to test at the compat mode that you're at now and the new compat mode of the Azure SQL DB to make sure that the compatibility mode doesn't change the execution plans on the store procedures and queries. So
Yeah.
that would be your regression testing. Because
Yeah, that's what
I'm
we
doing
do.
that right now at work with the workload tools that John Luca made. I can't say his last name, Santoria, I think.
Mhm.
I've kind of automated that process at work where it's running. I capture a workload for an hour, and then I restore my snapshot and I baseline it on the test server, and then I benchmark it, and then I have a Power BI report to see all the differences. And it's very, very helpful for finding those regressions
Yep.
for stuff in the compat mode. So I plan on blogging about it one day. I
Yeah.
say that with
Same, we have some queries that we run and we've turned them into a Power BI report. So I think everybody has their own little flavor of that.
yeah. So, but yeah, you have to do some testing if you're going to go up in versions of SQL just to make sure that the changes they made to the engine didn't change how it runs your queries. You should do that every time you upgrade, before you upgrade actually, just to make sure. So
Matt has a question for you. Matt, you want to come off? Because I'm not sure I'm going to relay it correctly. You want to come off you want to turn on your
Yeah,
mute
I'm
button?
sorry.
Sorry.
It's I was working in this space about a year and a half ago, and it's kind of more on the fabric and analytics side now. But a client wanted us to move their Azure SQL database to a VM, and as I looked through everything, I was like, well, gosh, there's no really easy way to get it from Azure SQL Database to a VM and or managed instance. Have they made any easier ways to do that in the last year?
well, managed instances, if you're on 2022, technically you can do distributed AGs between 2022 and managed instances, and technically get your databases back. But no, it sucks.
So that's still they used to say like going like the Azure SQL database was a one-way street. So that's still the case without some painful maneuvers.
Yes, basically.
Okay.
Yes. It's just like if you go hyperscale, you only have what 60 or 90 days to go back from hyperscale in Azure SQL DB. You can't, once you go hyperscale for 60 or 90 days, you can't unhyperscale.
Yeah, you're right. I have seen that. It's been a while, but yeah.
Yeah, so you got to be, all in. So yeah, that's why I said at the beginning, you got to, do your research on stuff and make sure this is the solution for you for sure.
Yeah,
Because
and
there's no way back out usually.
you touched on it. They
pain.
just their cost was just like, I don't even know. It was like 20,000 a month or something, and they were just trying everything they could to get that cost back down.
Yeah. And there's ways to do it, and it totally depends on your database and your environment and how you're using it, on whether this is a solution for you. I'm not saying that Azure SQL DB is for everybody, but I am saying if you got a lot of smallish databases, especially, this might be it. Even larger databases, it might be it depending on how you're using them. Because you might be able to, you've got to analyze it and talk with someone that's, doing it and use the cost calculators and things like that to try to figure out the best solution. Because sometimes staying on VMs is better. Sometimes going to managed instances might be better. I'm highly in favor of VMs as well. Because you have a lot more control over VMs. But I'm also, if it's a smallish, a database I can put in SQL DB and not have to worry about as much, I'll take that as well. You know, I like the idea of not having to worry about hardware.
Right.
We've got another question from
And even
Young.
VMs, I don't have to worry about hardware as much. I just have to patch them.
All right. Thank you.
Young or Iran, if you want to come off of mute and ask your question, or I can read it, either one. I will read it. If you've got, do you have time or?
Yeah, go for it.
So Young asked, how about those app performance where the app's connected to the migrated SQL database? Is this also part of the regression test? So I think what they're asking, and I think you kind of answered it earlier, Tracy, that's a comparison of like workloads, really.
Yeah, I think, yeah, you'd be wanting to compare the workloads between the migrated database and the first database, probably, because I'd always have benchmarks or baselines from where I was before to where I am now.
Yeah, because you don't ever want to do your tests just like, hey, I've just migrated it and nobody's using the app. Everything looks the same. Sounds great.
Yeah.
You want to capture, you know, specific performance times.
That's why, like I said, I use workload tools by John Luca to it'll find it for me. No.
Excellent.
Yes. No. Here.
Excellent.
This will automate it for you.
Oh, brilliant.
Use it.
Hey, can you pop that in the chat?
Yeah. Use this, you can actually automate capturing a workload using extended events. And he has an EXE, but he also has a Power BI report that'll show you the differences between it. So you can capture one workload from one environment and replay it to another environment, or you can capture two different, you can capture one workload, replay it, and then compare them. So you can capture, like, if you took your data and like made a copy of it now out in Azure and copied a workload in production right now on your VMs and then replayed it in Azure, you can compare the two.
Beautiful. Ron asks, we have a requirement to migrate Azure SQL DB from one subscription to another subscription. What is the best approach other than using Resource Mover?
Not sure. To move it and keep it online be the trick. I'm not sure off the top of my head. Besides a backup and restore, but that wouldn't keep it online. Because I haven't had to move one between the subscription.
Yeah, I'm not sure I've tried that yet.
I don't know. Shoot me an email and I'll try to find out the answer.
Excellent.
That's the best I got on that one.
You're fine.
I'll put my email in here again, just so you don't have to wait to the end to get it. And I see a question about hyperscale in here. That's gonna be a question for whoever's in charge of cost and whoever knows the most about the performance of the database. I don't know if your architect would know, or if your DBA would know, or if it would be your director, or it's more of a team effort. I would say.
And I think that one really so the question for those of you that may not be able to see it is for the cost analysis of switching to hyperscale, is it a job for the DBA or a database architect? And that is really it depends answer, because I know different companies just really, a lot of companies don't even have that cost analysis stuff available for certain groups of people. And then others are like, I know as a database architect, I have to do some of that myself. But that's strictly because of my current role in my company. And that probably was not up to it was not in my predecessor's role. So,
yeah.
All right, we finished the questions. You can continue.
All right. Potential problems you're going to run into. Compatibility issues. There's going to be stuff that does not work in Azure SQL DB. So before you migrate, there's a tool called the Data Migration Assistant, or DMA for short. We don't remember initials. So Data Migration Assistant. I don't remember initials. That you can use that will tell you what features are compatible and not compatible before you even try anything. So you can go, hey, boss, we can't do this. Or, hey, we just need to change these few little things. There might be some performance changes, which we were just talking about with all this regression testing. This can be through the nature of it being in the cloud. It can be due to the nature of the hardware that's sitting on or the software configuration. It can just be due to the nature of it, the compat mode being changed upwards. So, you want to check that out and make sure things are running the way you want to. You're going to have security concerns. Everybody's scared of the cloud because of security, but you've got Azure provides tools like the Azure Express route to provide private network connectivity. You got the Azure Data Migration Service, which supports secure SSL and TLS connections to migrate the data. So you don't really have to worry about the data being floating out there unencrypted while it's being migrated and stuff. So downtime during migrations, this is going to depend on the amount of data being migrated and the process you use. You may not have any downtime, depending on the, using transactional replication and the Azure data migration services is the only way to get a minimum amount of downtime. There's basically no zero downtime with migrating Azure SQL DB. But those are the two methods to get a minimum amount of downtime. Gotta make sure you check for data consistency errors. Make sure everything gets there and is the way you want it before you do anything. Before you cut everything off. You want to make sure you're managing your costs. Again, a lot of things I see is people put things out in the cloud. They're not paying attention to costs, and then all of a sudden everybody's like, from the C levels, like, why is our bill so expensive? How can we cut costs? And then they want to tear everything out. You can't just tear it out as quickly as you were able to put it in there. And then everybody's sticking things out there, and then I'm finding things that are sitting out there that have been disabled and nobody deleted the stories, and they're being charged $10,000 a month for stuff they're not using. And then acquiring the skills you need. This is something, there is Microsoft, now I forget the name, but they have a website where they have a whole bunch of videos. Christy might help me remember this, but there's a website where they have a whole bunch of videos where you can learn a whole bunch of stuff about the cloud. And they have a whole bunch of videos that I'll remember
Plural
eventually.
site, all sorts
No,
of.
Microsoft's website. What's the website they have?
Yeah, their Microsoft Learn website has a bunch, but yeah.
There we go. So easy, Microsoft Learn website. But they've got, things that correspond to their certification classes and all that stuff, and they've got all the videos with Bob and Anna, and Bob and Anna did a whole workshop where they did one day on Azure, and they've got all that material sitting on GitHub that you can go and download as well. So there's all kinds of resources out there that you can do for free. It's just a matter of, you have to spend your own time on it.
Buck Woody's got a bunch too.
Yeah. So wine, dine, and migration time. Woohoo, we're ready, right? We're ready. We planned it. We're gonna do this, and we're gonna get our VMs gone, and we're gonna be so homesick that we don't have our own servers. Right? Yes, we are. So we're gonna ensure a smooth cutover by choosing the right time to do it. Expect less over. We're gonna have done all our testing. We're gonna do our final data synchronization. If we're using transactional replication or the Azure migration service, we're gonna make sure that it had finished what we needed to. We're gonna switch all our applications to the new database. Hopefully we were using DNS records or something like that, so we didn't have to change connection strings, I hope. We're gonna monitor the new system like a hawk. and make sure everything's working. And we've got new tools in Azure that we can use. We've got the Azure Monitor, we've got SQL Analytics, we've got all kinds of stuff built into it. New stuff being released all the time out in Azure to do stuff. We got Azure Arc, and they've got stuff built into that to help us monitor everything. You can even monitor some of your on-prem stuff in Azure now for free. So, you know, you just should check out Azure Arc, by the way. If you got anything in Azure at all, and you still got stuff on-prem, you should check out Azure Arc. But anyway, and we planned our rollback already, so we're ready to roll back if we need to, just in case there's some crucial thing to happen and we need to go back. And more importantly, everything, we've communicated with everybody what's happening. Everybody knows what's going on. They know what to expect. They know how much downtime is going to happen. They know who to contact in case of issues. And they know what steps to happen, and everybody knows their part and what's going on, right? Because we over communicated. So we did our cutover. We're done. Now, what do you got to do to manage your Azure SQL databases? Assuming we don't have more questions, which I don't think we do. We're gonna call life after migration. Isn't it Azure-ful? Hopefully I said that right. Azure-ful. Study booth. Adjusting to our new setup. We're going to performance monitor and tune it. We've got the query performance insights and automatic tuning that will help us optimize our database for better performance. It's just like Query Store for 2017, 2019, 2016, and all that stuff. We got our security management so that we can see who's accessing our databases. We can implement our firewall rules. We can manage encryption. We can set up and manage the advanced threat protection. We've got Azure Active Directory integration, always encrypted, all this fun, fancy security stuff ready to go and easy to implement. We've got backup and recovery stuff that we just need to know how to do just in case. So basically what we need to manage is our retention policies on our backups. We need to at least test the restore process one time to like a different place so that we know how to do it. You know, just because we haven't done it before in Azure. You know, gotta get over the jitters of being able to click the buttons or the scripts to do stuff in a hurry. You know, I don't want it the first time I do it to be in an emergency. Scaling resources, you got the advantage of scaling resources. Know where that is just in case you need to do it, and know what the cost implications are going to be. That way you can tell your boss, hey, you know, hey, this Azure DB is taking up these resources and now it needs this. This is what it's going to cost. Be ready for those discussions. Make sure you plan for that high availability and know if you need geo-replication or not, or failover groups, and what the business requirements are for disaster recovery. Make sure your business knows what that's costing them, because they get tizzy about costs sometimes. And help them manage their cost best you can anyways with whatever access they give you, because sometimes they don't give you enough access to help you do that. And stay in compliance with your regulatory compliance. Make sure you don't undo anything in those things. I work in healthcare, so that's why regulatory compliance are all over mine. And enjoy the fact that you don't have to do most of the database maintenance and updates, but there is two things you have to do. You need to set up statistics updates and index maintenance. You don't have to do check DB no more. You don't have to do backups. But you need to do statistics maintenance and index maintenance. I have a blog post on how to do that using runbooks and PowerShell on my website, because there is no SQL agent. You don't have a SQL agent. You don't have an easy way to schedule jobs. And Elastic Jobs is still in preview, so I didn't use that. So now we're on to how to be the cool parent, because we have children now and not toddlers, right? Managing our Azure SQL databases without tiers, because, you know, our other servers, we had tiers that say we crash on us. We're going to use automation. Not that we weren't doing that before. Like, everybody uses DBA tools, right? Or something. PowerShell. We're going to utilize the monitoring tools that are available out there. You know, use the Azure Monitor, the Query Performance Insights, the Azure SQL Analytics, anything new that they put out there. Look at the Azure Arc again. Understand and implement the security features. Those things are going to save you down the road. The advanced threat protection, the always encrypted, and use the Azure Active Directory integration so you're not using SQL authentication and stuff like that. Plan for your scalability. You know, if you're keeping up with all your monitoring tools, you should be able to know when you can upscale and downscale if you need to, and adjust performance tiers and compute size. That way you can better optimize for performance issues and help with cost. And most of, you know, you got to keep learning too. You know, keep learning what comes out. They're constantly making updates and stuff that can help. Sometimes they make changes, even with VMs, they make changes that can help with cost. Like going with SSD2s and things like that. And then they implement those behind the scenes on Azure SQL DB and all things go faster. Don't be afraid to ask for help. There's always people out there that are willing to help. Microsoft has a lot of documentations. They keep putting tutorials out there. There's blogs, online courses. And make sure you test your things regularly that you're changing, and test your disaster recovery plans, and make sure you do security audits and test your performance of certain things to make sure they're still doing what you think they're doing down the road. And keep a close eye out on your usage and the costs that are happening out there and what Microsoft is changing periodically, because they change things that affect costs. And sometimes there's things you can do to lower your costs so you don't know it because Microsoft's changed it and you haven't implemented it. Sustain the system. It does most of the work itself. You're going to do regular performance monitoring so you know what's going on. You're going to do routine security audits. You have consistent backup and disaster recovery checks that you're going to do. You got regular system updates that are happening. That's happening automatically. You're going to do ongoing cost management. You're going to proactively scale the system. And you're going to do regular training and knowledge updates and system health checks. If you do these eight things, everything else will take care of itself. You don't really have to do much of anything else. So, any final questions before I run through my funny conclusions? I think I see one. How do you validate migrated data? Well, once you do the cutover, you would turn off. Basically, you shut off the server that the data was coming from. Like, shut off connections to that server, and validate that like you have the same row counts. That's what I do. Same row counts in the data in the tables that get hit the most frequently on the on-prem server as you do in Azure SQL DB. That's what I do.
Yeah, we've got some paid tools, but there's been times that I haven't had paid tools, and same, like you just put, an Excel sheet, pre and post 2 different Excel sheets, and then do an Excel compare that does like row counts, some queries with aggregations, and then some schemas.
Yeah, I output them to 2 text files and use PowerShell to compare them.
There you go. That's what a true DBA does.
That's how I compare result sets when I tune store procedures. I output the result sets to CSVs, and then I use PowerShell to compare the CSVs to make sure I got the same result sets.
Nice.
I'm lazy. I mean, efficient.
I'm super lazy, and I use like one of the Excel add-ins that does a comparison.
Oh, that's too much work. I have to open Excel. I just use a PowerShell function I wrote now. So, are there any changes to schema during migration and how to handle them? Well, if you're using transactional replication, that would come. Would that come over? Or is that only data changes that transactional replication comes over? Yeah, it's been so long since I used replication.
Yeah, I've used it. It has it's called
break it.
Yeah, no,
That's
It
what I'm
has-
used to doing, is having broken replication.
Yeah, so I think in Synapse it brings it over. You know, in data lake type stuff, but not so much with the transactional replication.
I think if you're going to do a migration like that, you have to do like code freezes during that
Yeah.
period of time. I mean, you're going to have to tell people that they can't be making code changes and schema changes during that period of time,
Yeah,
because you're doing something major and you don't need other things changing on you that you have to factor into the fact that other stuff's going on.
oh, so she's saying might be use ADF. Yeah, so then you have to know for your specific circumstance, like what is an okay schema change versus what is not, and then make that comparison.
Yeah. And then you can use Redgate's schema compare to do that. And
Yeah, I use that all the time, actually.
yeah, you'd have to purchase it, but it's well worth the purchase.
Yep.
I highly recommend their whole SQL tool belt. In fact, that way you can have SQL prompt too.
Yeah.
No, I can't live without
Let's see
SQL.
if I can find a quick query for that as well. I got some. Go ahead, Tracy.
All right, so we're wrapping up here. In conclusion, we're going to go from sleepless nights to binge watching nights. Oh, doesn't that look peaceful with the stars? So the Azure SQL journey, we have our benefits: automated backups, patching and updates, high availability, scalability, managed security, performance tuning, and cost management. We talked about all these things. No need to talk about them again. We had our migration steps where we did an assessment, we did our planning, we prepared for everything, we migrated our schema, we migrated the data, we did our post-migration task, we did the cutover. The reward. What's our reward? Anybody know what our reward was? Everybody remembers me saying probably. Our reward is we have more time for Netflix and less time for stress. Right? We have peace of mind. We can focus on strategic tasks. We have cost savings, maybe. Improved availability and performance, security and compliance, because our rowdy toddlers are gone and we don't have to worry about our servers, and they're in Azure SQL DB. Oh, and we have personal growth. I forgot about that one. But more importantly, we have more time for Netflix. Well, and the stress. So, what are the top 5 Netflix you now have time to watch, to binge watch? This is the fun part. At least this is what it was back when I put the presentation in. Stranger Things. The Flash. I used to watch that. The Crown. I don't know. The Umbrella Academy. I watched that. Marsha made me watch that. Grey's Anatomy. My son's watching that. It has like 18 years of stuff. It's a long show. But now you can watch Netflix. Who doesn't want to do that? All right, we have time for more questions, but just to clear up any misunderstandings, no, you can't migrate your kids to Azure. You know, because we talked about toddlers, just to make sure. But go forth and migrate. We're Star Wars. And here's a toast to future good nights of sleep. I hope. I only put one reference in here basically for the migration guide to Azure SQL DB. And then my thank you slide. I am done. And everybody's quiet.
Oh, I was on my mic was frozen. Yay! Excellent. I love it. Any more questions? And Sarah, I was looking at an old school script that I have, and just running whatever your particulars might be against the information schema.columns table. Well, I guess it's a view. And like Tracy was saying, she runs a PowerShell script. I just do Excel when I didn't, before I had the Redgate's tools, but Just doing a compare and seeing where the difference is, and then seeing how does that affect your particular company.
I should publish some of this stuff. Y'all give me ideas for blogs. I need to go write them down so I don't forget them.
Yeah, you use things so often, but forget.
Well, that's why I wrote that one blog post that Matt put in there. It's because no, I couldn't find anybody that wrote up something on how to write maintenance tasks. I mean, it was like pulling teeth to figure out how to do that.
It's fantastic.
And then it's like the most popular thing I wrote all last year. Oh, of course, I only wrote 4 blog posts last year. But at any rate, Brent even put in his newsletter, so that evidently nobody writes about it.
Yeah, and that's huge. And they kept telling me that we don't need to do it. And I was like,
no.
are you sure?
No, you need to do it because I did it on a database. I did it on a database, and because I went into this company last year or the year before, and I did it on this one database. Not only did I get 100 gigs of 300 gigs back in space on a database where they were trying to save money and not grow the database because they were being cheapskates, but they asked me what I did to the database because it was faster.
Okay, cool.
You need to update
that's
stats.
The proof. That's the proof I've been looking for, because people are, no, you don't have to do it. So thanks for that.
Fibbers.
The transcript on that, when you said cheapskates, it came off as cheesecakes. I was like, wait, what?
but I mean, you need to at least be updating stats. And if you don't do indexes, you're just giving away space. And that's what you're paying for the most in Azure storage. Storage costs you more than anything else in Azure for the most part.
I didn't even think of that aspect. I was just thinking of the speed.
I mean, yeah, you use up CPU doing it, but when you're giving up all that storage for it, I mean, their database, like, I got like 100 gigs back out, I think the 250 that they were using. And they literally, like, it was the first day I was allowed in the database. And so I left it running in ADS overnight because I didn't have time to set up the job yet because I didn't have enough access to do that yet. And they literally asked me this day what I did to the database. And I was like, I don't know. What? Why? It's faster. And I was like, oh, I may have optimized your indexes and updated your stats.
Awesome.
Maybe you should give me access to the rest of the SQL Azure DB so I can do the same. Because this was like a very important database to the company, and they were complaining about performance. And I was like, well, let's do just what you normally do to a database. You know? I know people try to say don't do that stuff, but yes, you need to do that. You need to do those 2 things.
Yeah, I mean, it was our bread and butter as on-site DBA. It's just like, well, did you rebuild indexes? And I've actually had like even customers argue with me, like, no, we don't have to do that.
Oh my God.
I'm like, you sure? On the Azure SQL Database piece.
Oh yeah, you still gotta do it. It's still SQL. I mean, Microsoft tells you have to do that. We gotta find it now. Where's the internet at? I got one screen blinking in front of me on here. I can't see anything because the one screen's blinky. No, that's not the internet. I got one screen just darting back and forth. Stop that turtle. There's a turtle up here and it's just jerking back and forth. There we go. Let's see. We'll find you proof.
Yeah, and the argument I heard was the SSDs are so fast, it's just a waste of time.
Yeah.
And I was like, I've been DBA for a long time, and I've seen indexes do some amazing things. After they're rebuilt. but that's just cool. So I will run with this.
Right here. Oh, Microsoft's own website. Of course, this is how I eventually figured out how to do it. This blog doesn't actually work. But there is a reference somewhere on their website that tells you to do this. Because I did a presentation on maintenance tasks for Azure SQL DB for past summit. Maybe that presentation has a link. So get out of my way, Copilot thingy, go away. I'm not used to you yet. I didn't touch that way. This will get me close to it, though. Maybe not. No, that didn't get me close to it. I'll get there eventually. I'm gonna find it. It's somewhere. Because I had to dig forever to find out how to get that to run. But there is, they have somewhere in their guidance on doing this. I know they do.
Ooh, Tracy,
Yes.
plug because of Young's question, are those queries of yours open source? Plug for that resource that you created in GitHub for DBA stuff and resources. Blah 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 blah. Do you have that GitHub handy?
No.
Do you know what I'm talking about?
Yeah, I do know what you're talking about, but I don't have it handy.
Okay.
I do now. This.
Okay. Let me see.
That thing we talked about doing. That. Oops.
Yeah.
What?
Except not that.
My link didn't work. This.
Yeah.
I don't know that we got much stuff out here yet, but we started.
Yeah, we can add it to that because that's a good question. I think that would just be plain SQL Server though. It wouldn't even be. Yeah. So this website, Young, that she's posted, we could add some to here.
Yeah, we were trying to make a repo that just had all of the things.
Go here,
yeah.
go there.
Yeah. Instead of having like everything everywhere.
Yep.
So. And try to have like if you were the go-to person for a particular topic, your name would be near that particular topic, or someone had the coolest scripts for something particular, but you can always hit me up for whichever queries you're talking about, and I will post them somewhere.
Okay.
Yeah, I do have
super basic ones, but
yeah, it's no problem. It'll give me an excuse to write a blog on stuff I do. I need blogs, you know.
Yep, so do I.
And I never think of anything to write them about, so you're helping me make this.
You write such good long posts too. I know those take time.
I do.
That's why I don't get more fat posts out on mine. And when I do, it's like something, okay, this is quick. I can at least do this one. Look what I found today.
That's why I probably don't get that many blogs done, is because I think they have to be this long-winded things.
Yeah, me too. Like, oh, I don't have half a day to do that.
Well, mine don't actually take me that long.
Oh, mine do.
It's more the the thinking about it than anything else.
Mine do, just because I'm like, oh, that's not formatted right. It's gotta.
Oh no, you should
I get
you
stupid
should see
with
how
it.
many times people come up to me and tell me you got an error in your thing. And I was like, I'm sorry. It's like I did the best I could. I don't know. There's some place where they do talk about doing check DBs with it, and they tell you that you need to run index maintenance. I know they do.
Yeah. Oh, they do. Yeah. That's been around forever.
They literally tell you about their check DB process and everything. Let's just go. It's bound to be in my presentation I did at Summit, like back in before Summit died. It came back to life. This one. Bound to be in a link in here, unless it's too expired to be in here. Look how old that is.
Nice. Love it. Oh, I have old things that I've downloaded
Oh.
from past conferences, and I still pull them out every once in a while.
Well, this is my own slide deck.
Yeah, that's what I'm. Yeah, I do it for other.
But I
people's,
didn't put any links at the end. Darn nabbit.
I've got. Oh, you'll appreciate this. I was pulling some of these out the other day. Let's see if it'll come up on the. Oh, will it come up? I don't know if it'll come up.
No.
It's not coming up.
Invisibles.
I want to come up. It's just a disc. Good Lord. Oh, maybe because it's got a reflection. It's a past summit 2014 best of past summit CD. Oh, there we go. What is
Yeah,
it? Advanced Data Recovery Techniques by Paul Rando. So we've got some advanced modeling. Tabular.
There is somewhere where it is documented that you still have to run that stuff on Azure.
Got inside Ola Holograms maintenance solution.
There we go. I know that one inside and out. My favorite thing about Ola Holograms maintenance solution is my thing about Ola Holograms maintenance solution. But have you seen my thing about Ola Holograms maintenance solution?
No.
Let's see. I have config tables.
Nice.
You literally stick all the values into the tables.
Lovely.
That way, because what we did at Channel Advisors, we had master target servers for SQL Agent.
Mm-hmm.
So all the job literally resided on one server and was sent out. That's how master target works.
Yeah.
So we couldn't put the parameters in the job because some of the servers would be different. So we created config tables. That way we could just put the values in the DBA database. Yeah. And so I published these out on GitHub.
Nice.
So, and then I've propagated them through a few companies so far. Not my current one because I just started there in October and I'm not a DBA.
Gotcha.
But a few people have stumbled across these and liked them.
Yeah.
Because you don't have to change the SQL agent job. You just go in here and change what you want to change.
Nice,
And
I love it.
It's less to manage.
Yeah, that would be lovely. Love it.
And I have one. I think that there's one script to implement the whole entire thing. I was at one point, and I have a job too. Like if you implement it a certain way, it'll get the backups. I have it where it's like if the full backup hasn't happened within a week, it'll automatically take it the next time it runs the job. So you set up the job just to run every hour, and it just takes it the next time it can get it.
Yeah.
And then waits a week.
Nice.
The same with the differentials. It takes it within 24 hours. And if something happened the hour before, fine, the next hour it'll pick it up and take it.
Love it. Well, as always, thank you for coming and speaking with us. We appreciate it.
No problem.
Wonderful, timely information. And then lots of bonus materials. Thanks.
Bonus materials. Yeah.
Bonus. You got the Easter egg. You got the Easter egg in Tracy's presentation. But
Some of you
thank
did. At least two people did.
That's right. Yeah, we're going down. People are going to eat dinner, so I should probably head downstairs myself. But
Yep.
thank you so much, Tracy. We always appreciate you coming and speaking for us. You give us great content, and we love it. And love you. Yay!
And we have fun with the toddlers and the Netflix, and
Right?
just don't migrate your kids to the cloud, please.
I love it.
I told you I had fun with this presentation.
That's right. You should. We'll have to get you a toddler t-shirt.
I'm a toddler on fire. Try to catch me. All right. Y'all go have dinner. If y'all need anything, y'all have my email, and I'll get that stuff to you as soon as I can get it checked off my to-do list.
Yep. Right there with you. Thanks so much, Tracy. Appreciate it. Thanks, everybody.
Thank you.
Bye-bye.
Thanks. Bye.
Thank you.